What is up, you guys? I hope you're having a wonderful day. My name is Ben, and welcome to my channel here. So I wanted to make a tier list for the playable characters in the game, in the story of Symphony of War. Given my extensive experience with the game so far, I've beaten the game on water difficulty with permadeath multiple times. Just to show you guys here, I currently have over 200 hours of playtime on this game, and I've done all the achievements. So given my experience with the game, I just wanted to give my thoughts about some of the characters in the story as well as the compatibilities. All right, so this tier list I'm going to do here today is going to be purely only based on the compatibilities of the unit themselves. Okay, so I actually put the list together. I've gathered some information as well. I did not put any forethought so much into it, so it's going to be more of a first impression as I go through every character as well. All right, so let's get started. Now, the first character we're going to take a look at is Lindsay, which is the same counterpart of the male characters as well for the protagonist of the story. Now, all in all, this character has two phases, right? So it's going to be the pre-death phase and then the post-death phase, right? The pre-death phase was okay. It was an okay unit, better than a soldier, I would guess. But the post-death phase actually gives this unit a lot more bonuses. So let's take a look at that here. So in terms of stat, you can see armor not that high, pretty much like mid-range, high mid-range of for most of the other units. Very high magic. Strength is decent as well with skill, and usually very high leadership. Now, as you can see right now, the affinity is dark, and the reason for that is because you come to a point that your leadership is so high that being light doesn't really give you additional bonuses, because the main reason why you go with light is because light offers you a lot of leadership for your units. But it comes to a point with Lindsay at the very least that your leadership goes so high that you can actually go dark for more damage and magic and strength and magic, and still be able to have a fully stacked squad with 9 units inside. Okay, so this is why usually towards the end of the game, maybe usually beyond chapter 25 or so, I usually transform Lindsay into dark, because then it boosts her magic attack as well as physical attack as well. Some of the leadership traits that this unit has, as the when you get towards the end of the game, you get a plus 20 capacity, which even further it helps you get a max of 9 units inside your squads, which does helps a little bit. And also your hero heals and boosts the morales of all allies within 3 tiles. So having Lindsay in the middle of everybody is usually a good thing to do in order to keep the morale up for your units and their HP as well. And additionally, there's another passive for even more moral boost for the 3 tiles. Now, I'm not quite sure if those two scales together, if they stack together, I mean, but it is what it is. Now, as for a trait that you can give Lindsay, there's multiple things that you give here. I don't think any defensive traits such as unassuming are very valuable. I gave the Smite because Smite increases damage to rogues, assassin, and magic units. And given that this character does an AoE spell at the beginning, I figured that might as well increase the damage. So the damage here doesn't say that the damage is particularly towards melee damage or magical damage. I'm just assuming it is all damage altogether. So therefore, I decided to, if I give that to this unit, it'll be able to deal a lot of damage to magical units as well as assassin and rogues. And also, I don't know if magical spells can crit, but given that they probably do not, I give him or her concentration, which means that they cannot crit anymore, but they do 15% more damage. So the AoE spell that they do can do another additional 15% damage as well. And they also have the Guardian trait, which is very good on defense, decreases their damage by 25%. So given all of this information, I can easily say that Lindsay is easily an S tier character. It is likely that Lindsay will be the first squad of 9 units that you're gonna have in the game. So right off the bat, it's going to be very high leadership in the beginning of the game. This usually is one of my units that I, for sure, if I send this unit in to attack, they're going to one-shot the other squad. So this is usually a very high kill unit that I have as well. One other thing that you can do, if you do get that trait, is that you can give them the treasure hunter trait. so that every time you kill a unit, you may be able to get additional items as well, which with Lindsay you often do as well. So the hunter trait, the treasure hunter trait is a very good trait for her while you're playing the game, and whenever you get towards the end of the game, you can change it out for something different. Okay. Next, we have Jules. Now, Jules is one of the characters you get within the first map, so in the first map of the game. He's with you pretty much throughout the entire game. Pretty good unit. Usually what I personally do with him is that I make a Raider Archer squad, which is going to be comprised of 5 Raiders, horses, and 4 Archers. So what that does is that it allows me to move after hitting as well. So I can move in, hit, and then move back out as well if I want to. So it gives him extra mobility. So instead of having a 6 mobility, I get 7. So that's usually one thing I do with him as well. Being a horse, he gets the hit and run bonus. That's just being a passive bonus to horses. He gets the Monarch. The Monarch is more of a trait you get towards the end of the game after you know that he is the king of the Sand Country. I don't remember the name of the country at the moment. So here it said that every unit in Jules squads will always cover him from target damage. I'll be honest, I don't really play him with the cavalry. I just play him with archers only because I want to maximize the archer captain bonus that I have for free. So therefore, I want to insert as many archer units because I would rather have more units in my squad than having less unit but more versatile units, if that makes sense, right? So usually what I do is that he's also one of my first squads that has usually 9 units in their squad as well, because I go full archer, right? So since I go full archer, every unit's decreased capacity by 2, and that helps me get the maximum as well, right? So that's usually a very good thing. He's an all-around good unit. I did not compare his stats to other potential raiders. Usually raiders or light infantry or light cavalry units have a very high skill, which means that their defenses, their evasion, their hit strength bonuses, and also the critical strengths as well. So I usually, all around, it's a very great unit. I like him very much. I don't believe he's quite S tier. Like S tier is very something particular to me. But I would believe he's, I would say A tier for sure. Great unit. I usually go in with my 9 archers. I decimate one other squad. It doesn't always kill because they usually do less damage to, let's say, like heavy armor people. But all around, they usually can kill, I would say, like 50 to 80% of all the units in one shot. And then usually what I can do is that I can take one of my supplementary unit, and then I can just try to surrender that unit or just finish them off if I cannot surrender them, right? So usually I would give them a good A squad all around for this Jules as a leader as well. Next, so we're going to talk about Sybil. Now, Sybil has a 2 phases as well. She has a early phase where she's a priestess of mercy, I believe it is, right? And then she just she's mostly like a healer, and then later on she becomes a paladin, which is then more strength based, defense based. I do believe that they can heal as well. They have a passive heal as well. Sybil is probably one of my least favorite leaders. She usually has quite low leadership throughout the game. One thing that I forgot to mention about Jules though is that usually I give Jules light if I can at the beginning of the game until the point where I can have a full squad of archers without being light, and then I transfer him back to being lightning. Okay, so you can usually do that if you find a few lights throughout the game. You can purchase them. Sometimes you can find them after kills. So often what I do is that I transfer some of my most S tier leaders as light in order to give them as much units as possible, and then later on, whenever that's not needed, I transfer them back towards the next affinity that gives them more stats for their current role. Okay, so that's one thing I want to touch on. Next here, for Sybil, I mean, paladins to me are okay units. They're mostly defensive. I'll be honest, if you guys watch my playthrough, I don't get hit that often, right? So I usually just go in, kill all the units all at once, and then I don't even get hit back most often. So having high defensive not even that important to me. I would rather have more offensive power as much as possible. She has very high weapon strength, and strength as well is adequate. Armor is very high. She's a good unit. In terms of special ability, she has Guardian Impulse, which gains a chance at an extra action for every ally below half health at the end of combat. Now, then again, I don't really go below half health most of the time, to be honest. So these are the traits relied to paladins only, and I give her a beacon, which means that whenever an ally is healed, this unit also heals up for 25%. So it helps keep her alive. I mean, Abigail, to be honest, she's probably one of my most least favorite character. I mean, in terms of being a squad leader, throughout the beginning of the game, she has very low leadership. Towards the end of the game, her leadership went way up, way higher. So therefore, I'm not sure if that is a change between going from a priestess towards a paladin. Maybe that's the change that occurs. But I do feel that her leadership has increased tremendously towards the end of the game. And what I did for her usually is that I put her as a flying unit at the end. So I put her with 3 dragons and 2 other healers or something like that. And then I use her as a flying unit, which is adequate, I guess. But in terms of special abilities, the special traits that she might have, she's just pretty much the same as any other paladin I have in my roster. So not very anything special here for her, sadly. Next, Barnabas. Barnabas has some unique traits, one of which is the mentor leadership, which greatly improves the leadership growth of subordinates. Now, that's pretty good. Usually what I do is that also Barnabas is one of the most highest leadership unit in the game for you. You're going to be able to get a full squads of characters as well for him as well. Usually what I do for him is that I do like hussars, which are the horse with the pikes. And then I do like knights and valkyries, and I do a whole horse unit as well. Usually you need about 5 horses, but sometimes if I want to have 9 units as soon as possible, if I put all horses, then I can try to maximize my units, the number of units in the squad as early as possible. High mobility unit, usually as a cavalry unit, gives you 7, and then also allows you to move out afterwards, which is great because sometimes you might be able to move in, kill most of the unit, but not able to kill first turn. And then you can move it out and then allow somebody else to come in and finish in order to be able to push forward, right? So that's why I really, really love horse units and squads, because they allow me to move in and out very often, and I can be assured to involve my gameplay by moving in for the kill, and if I don't finish him off, I can move him back, and then somebody else can go and finish the job. So horses, I usually buy almost every horses that I can find in the game. Horses are amazing. If you have the chance, always better to go a horse unit than a non-horse unit, mainly because if you can have the more cavalry units, squads, then it allows you a lot of mobility in the game as well. Then you can rush all the enemy at once, and then you can reach maybe a unit that you might not have been able to reach if you did not have that additional mobility as well. So that's always amazing to do. Also, what happens also with these units is that every character inside the squads increases their leadership growth more than into a different squads. And what often happens is that towards the end of the game, I often use those units in order to create additional squads on the side with high leadership counts as well. All right, so that's usually something I do. I don't believe he's S tier. Like, he's not like amazing in terms of stats. Again, weapon skill, armor pretty high. Strength is kind of low for being a knight, but again, very high armor. So usually I put him into the front line. Usually, I would say that he's, in terms of utility, I would put him higher than Jules for sure. But I would say still A tier, not quite S tier yet, but still a pretty strong A tier at this time. Next, we have Stefan. Now, as you can see, Stefan, I've inserted a little bit more information, and I want us to go into those a little bit here. So, Stefan, for me, easily S tier, one of my most used units in the entire game, and I'll tell you why right now. First of all, he's assassin rogue type of character, so high damage, high skill. As you can see, he has incredible skills, 239. I believe that is the highest in the game in terms of skill points. Super high, very strong unit. He is a rogue assassin type, so therefore he has thievery, which on combat initiated by this squad is still a small amount of gold from the primary target based on skill. So therefore, since he's based on skill here, super good to do. I also gave him precision, which is a critical hit bypasses 100% of target's armor. So he one-shot any character that he touches practically every single time. I don't know his critical rate with such a high skill points, but it's probably the highest in the game as well. So super high. Usually he just one-tapped every character that he touches, especially if he attacks into the first turn, attacks the backline, usually kills a unit in the backline. All right. Also here he has gains an extra attack. Every attack and every counter attack Stefan uses will be a stealth attack. So this is usually towards the end of the game after he gets his special swords, I believe, or after he becomes a Nephilim. This is the specific power that he has. So it means that he gains an extra attack, and so it seems to me that now he attacks 3 times per turn, and every attack and every counter attacks he uses his stealth attack. So he's always attacking the back line at every single attack he does, which is just truly amazing. He also has the passive. He has a leader trait, which is the treasure hunter trait, which increases chances to find an item when destroying or forcing the surrender of an enemy squad. So this is a very good leader trait. Sometimes you can purchase or you can find that leader trait in order to give that to other leaders as well. But he has that by default, and that's a very good trait to have on him as well. So with all these traits here, usually if I have a chance, I like to give him the scavenger, which increases the gold gain from killing units on him as well, because the squad that Stefan has is my highest kill squad, one of my highest skill squad that I kill the most units with, and also I always prioritize killing with him because it gets me a ton of gold back. Now, in the previous playthrough, I was able to find the scavenger trait very often, but in the last one, I believe I was only able to find it once, which is very surprising. I'm usually able to find it way more often than that. So maybe they've nerfed it by the percentage chance to find that trait. But regardless, his squad is a squad that I use all the time in order to make as much money as possible. And as you know, money allows you to buy more units, to buy all the orange units, all the orange artifacts and things like that. So it is very important throughout your playthrough. But also one thing that I want to point out is that these are usually the type of the special artifact I want to give to him. So the Lendis fixed dice, so it doubles items drop rate from battle. So that's one great thing, because since he has the treasure hunter trait, every time I go with him and kill a unit, if I find something, it doubles the item that I just found, which is very awesome. So I love to have that on him as well. In my last playthrough, I was not able to find this item, but whenever I find this item, I give it to him to allow him a chance, one out of 3 chance, in order to be able to kill a squad and then have a chance to play again, and then I can kill the squad again. And often what I do too also is that if you have the blessing from your Nephilim power, is that if I kill a unit and I don't get the second turn, what I can do is that I can bless him to play again, and then that gives me another chance to trigger the Jade figurine into the same turn in order to be able to attack up to 3 times per turn. So this guy was just incredible. There's sometimes where I would do the blessing and then I would get the second turn for free. I would kill 3 units in 1 turn. I'd be making like 2,000 gold per kill, so I'd be making like 5 to 6,000 gold in a single turn just from him attacking, which was just amazing at that point. And also I like to give him the gorilla armor because, as you guys know, this unit is usually a light infantry unit, so by not being penalized to go through woods whenever you're inside the wood map, obviously, it allows you to have higher mobility and be able to move and do your ambushes more easily. So this is also a very good gorilla armor that I give him. Sometimes I can give him the boots, the +2 mobility boots. Those are okay as well, but I really like the gorilla armor for the no penalty in the woods as well. Okay, so again, Stefan is easily one of my favorite unit in the game, above Lindsay for sure. This guy I use all the time. All right. Now, I'm gonna follow Stefano with Diane. Obviously, those goes hand in hand. As you can see here, I took a screenshot with her stomping because, let's be honest, I almost think that I want to do a whole playthrough with just using Diane and be able to kill everything, because Diane is just truly amazing. Now, one thing I'd like to say here, the counterattack leader trait is very great on her. I usually use Diane as my main defensive unit, and I'll get to you about that in just a moment. So having a counterattack trait, now granted this is a trait I had to give her, right? But it gives me plus 25% damage while on defense and stacks with the black belt, which I also have here on the right side, okay? So very important to pair those together. She also has the Light's Judgment, which when taking damage in battle, Diane gains attack power for the duration of the battle. So I'm not really sure if that goes like, does she have to be at lower HP, or it just means that every time she takes damage, her damage goes up. I'm not sure if it is with like a percentage of HP missing or something like that. This is not quite detailed in that way, but I'm not quite sure. And she also gets Imposing as a free passive, which increases the likeliness of her being attacked. So putting her into the front row is usually very useful as well, and she receives 50% less spell damage by 50% of armor. So having very high armor for her is amazing as well. She has very high strengths as well. Low skill, but you don't really use her for that either. Okay. And then she cannot dodge because she's so big, which is fine. And then she deals increased moral damage because she's a bigger unit as well. So that's usually what she have. Now, here's what I usually try to put on her, okay? So this might not mean that you're gonna find all these orange artifacts throughout your gameplay, but if I have them, this is usually what I put on her. So the first main thing here is the temporal modulator, which means that she always attacks first when defending, and it does not work on ambushes, okay? So you still have to be mindful of that, and it works only up to 3 times per phase. So usually what I would do is that I would rush in with all my units, and then I would always ensure that Diane is in a spot kind of like in range of all the other remaining enemy units. So usually what I would do is that I would usually attack with Diane towards the end of my turn to make sure that if she needs to be in a spot that's very isolated with a lot, because you don't want to have her in the middle of all your units, because then the enemy unit might not be able to reach you. And the reason for that is because I often use the I don't remember what it's called, but the blessing that makes them targetable by the enemy, right? So what I do is that I would make her attack last in an open field, and then I would give her the trait, the blessing that makes her targeted by the enemy squads. And then what it would do is that they would all rush her, right? And then for the first 3 turns, so if there's 3 or more enemies, she would always attack first, and then she would just kill everyone, which is just truly amazing. And also, given the black belt as well, given that she does an additional 25%, now she's doing 50% damage extra while on defense. She's attacking first on defense as well. She's doing an extra 50% damage with a counter attack and the black belt. And also, I give them also the Soha's Blast Charge, which heals the units for every kills that they do. So they pretty much always stay at 100% HP throughout the whole fight. So there's one time I believe like she was attacked 10 times and she just killed everyone. She's really an incredible unit. Often what I do with her is that I give a few Valkyries. I don't put healers. I put mages, so her in the front row, knights in the front row as well, or something like champions and things like that. So heavy armor units in the front row. I give mages in the middle row, and in the back row I put like Valkyries, or maybe like 2 Valkyries and then maybe like a Centurion in the middle, or a Hussar to give additional attack power. And what is great with the Valkyries is that if they don't have to heal, they will attack in 2 turns. They don't attack as strongly as a knight would, but they still do quite a fair bit of damage. So if they need to heal, they will heal, but if they don't need to heal, they'll just attack instead. So usually a super strong unit. She just wrecks the whole board. She's by far the strongest leader, in my opinion, in terms of raw strengths. And so with that, with all that said, she's going to be the number one top S rank that we're going to have for the entire game, 100% hands down. Next, we have Abigail. Now, Abigail, she's more of, I would say, a utility unit. Not so much in terms of strengths, because obviously she's a healer, so there's somewhat of a limited thing here, but she is, every dragons in her squads gain class XP. Okay, so, which is very good. I ended, how many dragons did I have at the end of my last playthrough? If I include Xenos and the blue dragon that you find, I believe I had about 14 to 15 dragons, something like that, with all the dragons I found. So there's a lot of dragons for her to help gain class experience. Now, I don't know if it is necessary, because as you know, if you watch some of my other videos as well, you can easily get class experience faster by doing the arena. But if you have new dragons in her squad, they will just get it faster. So I guess the dragon affinity is okay, but could you do a proper playthrough without? Probably still, yeah. Like, I did not have any issue taking all my dragons to flying form by the end of the game. And would I still be able to do that even if I did not have her? Probably. So with that in mind, she's okay. I would give him probably like a B or C tier. Like, I would say low B and high C tier. She's nothing really special. Her leadership is low compared to others. But if you make her a flying unit, usually dragons don't have that high of since they take 2 squares and they go up to 15, maybe a bit higher. It's not usually much of a problem. To be able to get 3 dragons and 3 units in the back, even just with 87 leadership. So I would give her a B for that. Now Xenos, I'm sorry for the picture here, was I could not get his face in this picture over here, and here I was able to get it there. So you get Xenos at the end of the game practically for only 1 fight. So it is really sad. His leadership is very low, so you don't really want to make him a leader, honestly. You probably just want to have him in somebody else's squad. Now, in my last playthrough, I made him and Abigail bonded, so therefore I put him as a unit in Abigail's team, which was alright. Therefore, here the Hand of Xenos here, 2x damage to enemy morale from all actions. I don't really care because he's very strong, so he's a very strong unit, and usually his unit, I have 3 dragons and then some healers in the back, and they usually one-shot any unit. So I don't really care about the morale, because if you're dead, doesn't really care what your morale is. So here it says, and enemies will not surrender. So he's only there for the last fight, and in the last fight, the enemies cannot even surrender anyways. So that is pretty much a mute point. It's kind of like a super strong unit. Amazing HP. Stats are great, very, very strong, but as a leader, like, I would not use him as a leader at all. In terms of strength, he's very strong, so, like, I would not use him as a leader, but he's a very strong unit by itself. So I'm guessing I put him into B, but higher than Abigail, because of his strength. But as a leader, like, you don't want Xenos as a leader. You want it for his raw ability. So I guess these guys have very high leader strengths as well, and these guys too, and they're also very strong units. But for him, he's only strong as a leader. He has a lot of lack, so therefore I would not put him any higher than mid-range B tier, higher B tier. Next we have Lysander. So Lysander here, he's the first unit that offers you the Shock and Awe, which decreases the firearm unit count by 2. If you guys have seen my playthroughs, I usually go for firearms towards the end of the game. I don't think that rushing firearms in the early game compared to other trait abilities is good. So personally, I would rather So Lysander, I kinda use him with the firearms that he has, but I would say he remains very underutilized until chapter 20 plus. Once I start doing other firearms and then the firearms get doubled attacks per turn, up to that point, my firearms are usually not very much used all that much because I would rather use other units that attack twice instead of attacking once hard. I would then attack twice average or high, you know. So usually firearms for me is more of a late game type of thing. But he does have the field marshal with increase +10 hit evade to the entire army. So one thing that's important here is that he has to be a leader for you to be able to have that trait, right? So remember that if you put him as a add-on unit to a squad with a different leader, this trait will not be activated because he needs to be a leader for that. So that's very important to remember as well. He has another trait which means vulnerable, is that he cannot be directly targeted, which is okay. I mean, would it change a whole bunch if he could be targeted? I guess not, but this is just kind of like fun that he cannot be targeted. So, I think that's kind of like not a useless trait, but would it change any other way? Like, if this trait does not exist, would it change the way that I use them? No. So, don't really care so much about that one. I would give Lysander, his leadership is usually pretty high. He cannot attack, but he gives passive bonus. So, personally, I would probably put him as A tier, but below Jules. Jules has a similar trait, which is the +2 capacity to archers, which I can utilize earlier in the game that I can do instead of Lysander, because I use firearm personally more into the late game. And the reason I use firearm more into the late game is because in the early game, even if you rush firearms, you only have a few spare parasite in order to create firearms unit. So it's not very useful to have in the early game. You're better off using your trait towards other things instead of that. So that's one thing I would suggest. So I would put him below Jules, still in A, because he has a pretty good passive that affects the entire army. So that's very, very good. So yeah, I would do that there. Perfect. So number 10, Jaromir. So Jaromir, his leader trait is Tundra Warrior. I think there's like 2 to 3 Blizzard maps that we played throughout the entire campaign. So very underwhelming for that. I've never been like, oh, I need to use Jaromir for this map because it has snow. Like, I've never thought that. Also, additionally, it means that this trait here is one of his 2 traits. And I don't believe it is overridable, so therefore he only has 1 additional trait to be able to use. As a knight, I don't think his stats are particularly special, so he's pretty much an underwhelming knight with only 1 usable trait. So personally, I would put him as a D tier. Now, at the end of the game, I removed Jaromir as a leader. His leadership is kind of like low for whatever I'm looking for. I look for 95 plus. Usually what I look for in like 90 to 100 is usually what I want. 84, pretty low. At the end of the game, I actually put him with Barnabas. So he was a knight in Barnabas' squad because I didn't really have anywhere else to put him and I didn't really care all that much, to be honest. So yeah, so that's Jaromir. I'm going to put him as my first D. I don't believe I put him lower than Sybil, mainly because at least Sybil has 1 trait that's special that is somewhat usable compared to him, and she has 100 leadership as well. All right, so that's what I would say for Jaromir. Beatrix. Now, Beatrix, when I first got her, I thought she was trash. I did not play with her at the beginning at all. I did not like her. But then what I did is that I started to use her, and what I did is that I put 2 dragons. 2 dragons for mobility, to allow her to fly everywhere, and then I increase her skill-based points of magic. I give her a whole bunch of plus magic items as well. Dark increases her magic points as well very high. And what I do is that I give her 2 dragons, and then I can have her fly around everywhere, and she pretty much just one-shots anybody. So she just goes around and one-shots every unit that she encounters. Super strong units. I believe she used to be stronger because in my last playthrough, she would not always one-shot squads, the enemy squads, but in the playthrough before that, she would just she would kill one-shot anything, always, all the time. So I think that they might have nerfed her a little bit, but regardless, super strong unit. I would probably give her an S rank. Is she higher than Lindsay? Lindsay gives a lot of passive buffs around her. She is just like raw damage. Like she's S tier with damage alone. So just because she can kill unit all by herself, super strong. Give her 2 dragons. Usually the 2 dragons are mostly there for protection. So I give her usually like 2 silver dragons or some of the other ones for protection. No need for healers at all. Oh, and also, I did forget to mention, just a moment here. Let me show you here. So she has 1 items that I give her is the giant thresh, the giant thresher. So I usually give her traits as well. So this artifact, plus 25% damage dealt to larger squad. Now, since she only has 2 dragons and herself, so that's 3 units. She's going to be dealing 25% additional damage to every other unit in the map as well. So that's an amazing trait that I use on her, an amazing artifact that I often use on her as well. Okay, so that's very highly suggested for that. So I would give her an S tier as well. Next, we can go to the next one. So here we have Kuroda. Now, Kuroda comes at the very end of the map of the game as well. He's in the game for a single fight. In my last playthrough, I used him for the last fight as a leader. I made him another assassin squad. It was not as strong as Stefan because Stefan is just amazing. He has, what do you say here, bonus movement in ambushable terrain and ignore enemy zone of control. So by zone of control, I think that means that, you know, whenever you're walking by an enemy unit, you cannot walk all the way through because they're mitigating your movement speed. With him, you can easily like go behind them and stuff like that. Now again, he's only there at the very end of the game as well, so kind of meh. Stats wise, high strength, pretty high skill as well, so pretty strong unit. Leadership is 84, even as being dark, which is pretty high. In the whole story, I kind of felt weird that he would join you at the end after being the pawn of the cult for so long. It just didn't really make sense to me, but Diana wanted to redeem him, so that's what she did. Personally, I think he's more of I would put him higher than, like, I don't have him as a picture here, but I probably would have him as a low C tier below Sybil. Mainly because Sybil has higher leadership than he does, and she has a special trait that is usable. For him, this bonus here, not very cool because he's only there for the last fight, and in the last fight, there's no shadow anywhere, so therefore he cannot even use his bonus. So very meh, pretty much useless to me. So I'm gonna put him as that as well. Stealth attack, yeah, so they're just from being an assassin as well. Okay, so next we have Narima. Now Narima, in terms of strength, like, she's very strong, high strength unit, high weapon damage. She has a pretty high skill, which also means that she's gonna crit a lot. So I give her the precision trait in order to make her bypass enemy armor on critical hits. Now she has a Desert Warrior. Now the Desert Warrior is kind of like the same thing as the Tundra Warrior. I I don't base my squads based around the terrain that I'm going to be fighting for that map. I usually just kind of live with it. I don't really think about it all that much. So the Desert Warrior is very meh. I wish I could remove it out of her in order for her to be able to give her something different. She has Guile, which this is great. So unit bypasses block and can attack any target. So she doesn't follow the role rules, which is pretty great because she can go and one-shot backlines. So she's kind of like an assassin almost that can attack anywhere, and she can also attack at range. So Jules takes. So you see here the retainer. The retainer is not a leader trait, which is great because it means that even if you change her into a different squad, she could still affect the retainer and affect Jules by reducing his damage taken by 50%. So what you could actually do is that later on in the game, you can put Narima into Jules' squad if you wanted to, and then you can use her as an archer per se, and also as a melee unit if you want to attack melee. I don't really see why you would, but you could do that, and also you can reduce Jules' damage taken by 50%. But like I said before, for me, Jules, he was never really attacked. Her leadership, as you can see, is pretty low, only at 67. So you pretty much only use her as a weapon tool, like as a damage dealer, squad leader. She does not very much have a special trait that I would attribute to her to being like amazing. I like the trait that she can use in order to be able to bypass enemy blockage. So therefore, I'd give her low B, high C tier. Like, so between these two spots here, I'll leave her at low B for now. All right. Just so you guys know, at the end of my playthrough, for the last time I played, she was not the leader of a squad. She was just a member of a different squads. So that's one thing to check out, right? Next here, for these guys over here, we have Rascuja. So Rascuja as well. He has the special leader trait for the Director Savagery, which means that at night, every attack is ambushed. Now, this is okay. I would say that maybe 1/3 of the map fights are indoors, so therefore this trait is unusable 1/3 of the time. The other 2/3, it is sometimes good that he has it, because there's a few times where he could have a freebie ambush because it was nighttime, even though he did not start in an ambushable area, or ended his turn to another ambushable area. So I've used this quite a few times. Here it says massive evasion boost versus stealth attacks. Now, I don't know if this is only to him or to the whole squad, right? So I believe this is only to himself. So having him in the back row, so that's interesting. So if you had him in the back row to protect against ambushes, could be pretty good for you. So that's one thing. But I think this is only affectable onto himself. Now, he's an okay unit. He's more like a ranger type of unit. He has his crossbow and then he has a melee attack, right? Pretty high skill, damage is pretty high, strength is okay, armor is average. So therefore, I would say if I had to look around, probably around the B tier. Would I put him above Xenos and Abigail? That's the thing, right? I think I would put him below Abigail, because Abigail I've used quite a lot in order to level up my dragons and things like that. That's one thing. And then Rascuja here, I put him over her because of the night ambush that he has, and also because his leadership was a little bit higher. At the end of my last playthrough, I did not have him as a leader either, but he was a pretty strong unit into somebody else's squad. So probably put him higher than Narima, because the night ambush helped a few times. He's a pretty strong unit all around as well. Okay. Next here we have Edina. Now Edina also becomes playable towards the last part of the game, the last third of the game. She's dark with fairly low leadership, so you would not use her as a leader really. She's also bonded to Diana, so if you put her into Diana's squads, they're gonna have a bonus for playing together. So usually that's what I do. I don't really give her any squads for herself. Give her some traits, and she has no special traits, as you can see. Only 2 normal traits that I can give her. So again, she has nothing special to give, so I would say that she's even below Jaromir at this point. Okay, so that would be a little bit of my tier list. Now, there are other specially named characters you can find in your game, in your playthrough, that may have some special characters as well. I do remember that there was this lady from the desert country that she had a bonus, a passive bonus to sword masters, like the female swordsmen and all that. It was okay. I didn't want to include them because they're not really part of the story per se. They're inside the story, but not like as a great length. I didn't want to have them here, but some of them were average. Now, some traits, there are some very important traits like the shock and awe trait. If you find those, usually what you can do is that you can make yourself a lot of units like these. So for example, if I just show you here, if I go to some of my squad here, this person here, I gave her the shock and awe. Actually, I don't believe this. So this one had such a high leadership that I did not even need the shock and awe on this player as well. So I was able to give them 7 cannons, and with 6 to 7 cannons, you can just one-shot anybody, like just like anyone. They just go and roll, and then you just kill them very easily. Here, as you can see, I have these units here. So Lieutenant Archibald, this is one of the orange unit that you can find, and he has a shock and awe as well. So if you can find those named units, make sure to try to buy them as much as possible because they do have those special passive. And then I could use them with horsemen that can kill the front line, then the knights go in, and then the second volley they kill the next line, and then I can usually kill any squads with those units as well. And then I have, for example, this other unit 2 here, this other leader, usually pretty high leadership. This is also an orange leader as well that I have. So these are some of my leaders as well. Gavin over here, I believe I gave him the shock and awe, so I gave him shock and awe as well. So with some special leader trait, you can make very strong units in order to be able to have a cavalry, like a cavalry units as well. So you can move a lot, and you also have 6 firearm units with a very strong front line. So you can easily just one-shot the front row, and then these guys can attack the middle row, and then you can finish off on the second volley. Usually a very good tactic to do as well. All right, so this is pretty much my tier list, guy. I hope you enjoy. If you like these, please let me know. I'll make more into the future for other types of games that I play in the future as well. If you want to leave a comment down below, if you agree with me, let me know. If you disagree, please let me know, because maybe you have a perspective that's different than mine. And then, as always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment. I will be glad to answer you. Give me a like on your way out, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content about these types of games in the future. And I'll see you guys all into the next video. All right, bye-bye.